I want to throw this laptop out of the window. I just want to punch this laptop in the face. So welcome to today's Greater Life CoffeeCast, which is principally focused on the pillar of happiness, but contains seeds of definitely health and definitely hustle. Because yesterday, Mike and I really got into it. Some frank exchanges that had to occur. And I got massively triggered. So today my question for you is, what are your reset protocols? And by that I mean, what do you have in place to reset your nervous system when you do get triggered? And there are any number of ways. And so I'll just lay out what worked for me and perhaps see if we can draw out some principles. And before I dive in, it occurs to me to share something that's really important. Is that in achieving anything great, two things are true. It will always be a team endeavour, no matter which way you slice it. And as part of that then, conflict, but better thought of as strategic collision, is always going to be a part of that. And actually being okay with there being moments when things aren't okay and you are not in agreement and that there are emotions. All of these things are essential to genuinely shaping and polishing a diamond. So, what did I do to reset my nervous system? Well, for me, it is about bringing my body back into calm. Because whenever it happens, particularly these days, I've noticed as I have done the inner work to release layers and layers of stuck and old emotions, which is essentially just layers and layers of pent up electrical charge, my sensitivity is actually much higher. So when a triggering does occur, I really feel it in my body, particularly around my chest. And so for me, it was to get my body moving and to get my breathing calmed. So this looked like actually taking Oscar, my dog, out for a walk and just giving myself some deep breaths and kind of shaking it out with my breath as well, like just doing that repeatedly, and then coming to one of my favourite spots where there are beautiful vistas of the sea and some boulders, and just hopping over these boulders. That edge between risk and reward, that edge where if I don't maintain absolute focus, I will crash and not burn, but could crash and smash my head on a boulder. That is enough to bring me totally into the present moment. It is enough to ensure that the funk I'm in is almost shed like a skin, is the only way I can describe it. And because boulder hopping is such a profound experience of joy for me, it's very hard for joy and triggered dysregulation to exist in the same space and time. And so this was it for me, was initially focusing on Oscar, getting him to do some swimming, chasing a stick, and just seeing that joy, which began to kind of chip away at the dysregulation, and then coming into some boulder hopping that just allowed that to be fully shed away. And as I reflect, perhaps with some increased heart rate as well, but for a different reason, to actually get the oxygen pumping, to engage in physical exertion deliberately, to challenge my physical system again, left no room for sympathetic nervous system dysregulation. So that when I sat down on a rock, heavily breathing, happy to have boulder hopped, what was left in that space was a deep satisfaction that allowed me to see the exchange I'd previously had in a different light, to recognize it, in fact, not as something potentially terminal, but as an example of an essential strategic collision that was instrumental in moving things forward. So, what principles might we be able to extract from this? Well, very much breathing being one. And I know they talk about, and I've used myself in the past, either 4-7-8 breaths, which is 4 seconds in, 7 seconds hold, 8 seconds out. And you can add a 7-second hold at the end of that as well if you want. And essentially, any time your exhalation is longer than your inhalation, you're going to be moving in the right direction of bringing yourself back into your parasympathetic nervous system, back to tranquility from triggered. And of course, what we're doing here with our breath is we are changing our physiology. And so if we want to change our emotional state, then we know that our physiology, our body, is a key part. Our words can be another key part to actually tell ourselves, check the story we're telling, and recognize, is this story that I'm telling myself about this situation, is it really true? And as part of that, then we are shifting our focus, and so allowing ourselves to focus on something different. So in my case, focusing in fact on not that we'd had a terminal fight, so to speak, but actually that we'd simply engaged in some strategic collision, which was essential, was again another key factor in allowing things to move. So there we have it. I think I've shared those before, and they're obviously elements of Tony Robbins' thing around emotional states. He talks about physiology, language, and focus, I think. And so here, I just simplify that thanks to some lessons I had from one of my mentors, Harry Singer, where he talked about body, words, and focus. And I see that those things were instrumental in bringing me down from my triggered state back to tranquility and back to being able to see just how important these moments are on the path we are walking towards building greater life. So, as I share those things, what is your recipe to go from triggered to tranquility? And I hope today, should that moment occur, that you can perceive it as something that is ultimately helping your path. Because in one of the charities I used to be involved in quite heavily, a charity called A Band of Brothers, we had a saying which was that conflict breeds intimacy. That if you are willing to stand in the fires of conflict with another human and stand and come back into the heart even as that conflict exists, then out the other side of that, there has to be a greater intimacy. So my hope is that this little coffee cast has today been helpful to you. Should you find yourself dysregulated, what can you do to change your body, particularly your breath, your words, the story you're telling, and your focus, the perspective you are holding, so that you come back to tranquility and power.